Welcome to Rising Woman Leaders, a safe space for women to thrive in community where their voices and stories are heard. We're a sisterhood supporting each other to live our dreams and embody the sacred feminine to restore balance on our planet. Join us each week as we return to the unconditional love and guidance of our heart and our womb. I'm your host, Meredith Ram, and I invite you to walk this path of beauty, devotion, and service with us. This year's Way of the Priestess program is now open for enrollment and beginning December 15th, 2022 for 10 months, leading all the way to September, the autumn equinox in 2023. I'm creating space for an intimate container of women to go on this journey, these initiation gateways, and to really step into their priestess self. I think of the archetype of the priestess as a vessel for the divine, one who is opening to become this channel to receive intuitive guidance and wisdom, and then to take action upon it and bring it out into their life. And for some people, this is this opportunity of service and giving back. For some, it's going to be about holding women's circles in our community and doing healing sessions and working with people with rites of passage. And for others, it's simply going to be about becoming a frequency, letting our lives become an embodiment of love, of awakening, creating this ripple effect that touches everyone around us, to be there for friends, family, community, to be that embodiment and that frequency of really uplifting this planet. So it's so important, I think, to have community and guidance along the way, especially if you consider yourself a highly sensitive person. So I'm creating this community where we will be meeting about twice a month on live Zoom calls for heart sharing, for ritual, for guest teachers throughout the year. And I also have designed a curriculum that each woman gets to go through that includes priestess practices, rituals with the new and the full moons, facilitation skills, initiation gateways. There's astrological wisdom, energetic clearing exercises, tuning into our feminine essence, healing the womb, sensuality, voice, leadership, tuning into our dreams and our intuition, our devotion, our spiritual practice, really coming into clarity around our legacy of love. And we close in the program with writing our vows as the priestess. And we have a closing virtual weekend and a ceremony for each woman to be witnessed in claiming this in her life, to cross a threshold of her embodiment as the priestess. On top of this, there's an option to have private healing sessions where we can do some deeper work of ancestral healing, rewiring core beliefs, healing childhood wounds, and even working with past lives. If you feel a resonance with all I've shared, it would be an honor to welcome you on this journey. You have an opportunity to book a call directly with me to learn more about it. I'll include all the links to download the program guide in the show notes. And you can also find everything at risingwomanleaders.com. I'm here today with Renee Linnell, who is a serial entrepreneur. She's founded or co-founded 5 companies, has an MBA from NYU. And before that, she was a model and a professional dancer. Having an unorthodox childhood and being surrounded by death at a young age led her on a spiritual quest that took her all over the world, culminating in her ordination as a Buddhist monk by a bipolar guru with delusions of grandeur. So she's not 100% sure that ordination counts. And what began as writing for catharsis in 2013, as she struggled to regain her sanity after being brainwashed in a Buddhist cult, turned into her first memoir, The Burn Zone, a memoir. We talked about that on an earlier podcast. And then Still on Fire, her new memoir, is the sequel. Her mission is to remind people who they truly are and to reignite their passion for being alive. Thanks for being here, Renee.
Thank you, Meredith. It's wonderful to be back.
Mhm. Yeah, so I'm so glad you wrote this book because beyond the story of what you wrote about in the burn zone, you have lived a really full life. And there are a lot of really funny and beautiful and yeah, just awe-inspiring stories. And I love how it like pulls different pieces from your life and brings it all together in this common theme. And do you want to share anything just about writing the book in general and like how that process was for you a second time around and what you learned from it?
Sure. I am so fortunate that readers from the Burn Zone really wanted to have a sequel. They wanted me to write a sequel. And I realized I still had a lot more to say. And with writing the Burn Zone, it was my first attempt at a book. And so, as you know, it's very difficult and you want to quit all the time. And I started to lose myself again as I was trusting the different experts along the way that told me I had to be different than who I am in order to get the book out into the world. And so I really had to find my voice and my writing style and insist on keeping it. So that was hard with the first book. I had this wonderful team that came together to help me. And then with the second book, it was so much easier because I do trust my voice and I do trust my writing style and I do trust my process. But yet I had the fear, well, what if readers don't like this one? They loved the first one. What if? So I had different fears and self-doubt, but I know that it's one of my divine gifts, writing. And I write in a way I pray that my words help to soothe the souls of the readers. And I've been told they do, that it feels like my soul is speaking to theirs. And so I did just trust the whole process, and it turned into Still on Fire, and seems like the world's really happy with it, which is lovely.
Yeah, it's so wonderful. Yeah, I was sharing with Renee before we started recording just the experience of it felt really nourishing. And I am a new mom and like am barely just catching up on sleep and all of that. And like, this was my first book coming back. Like, it felt like coming back to myself and coming back to just some of these like teachings and that I really love and really resonate with me and such good reminders. So yeah, I'm so glad you wrote it and listened to that pull because I know sometimes with like publishing, people can think like, oh, what's the point? Like, it's so hard to get a publishing deal or who's actually going to read it or, we can talk ourselves out of it. And the truth is, like, when we go all the way with something like this, it does reach the people it's supposed to reach. And like, there is an impact that happens there, no matter like how big or small it is. And yeah, so I'm just glad you took it all the way. And yeah, anything you want to add around just like how you approach those voices? Did you have any of those voices when you thought about writing this book or anything like that?
I knew it wanted to be born into the world, and people were requesting stories about my travels because I travel so much, like more than 50 countries before I turned 30, searching for truth and peace. And they asked about my romances as I tried to find my way back into the dating world after being completely broken and shattered and brainwashed and destroying my life and all of that. And then when I would tell my girlfriends about my attempts at dating, they would just start laughing hysterically and say, this has to be in your next book. And then I realized I had so many stories of magic and miracles that I wanted to share with the world. And so the theme of Still on Fire became magic, miracles, travel, and romance. And I knew that I could already see the book happening. I could kind of envision the final result. So I knew it was being called through me, and that my job was to just keep writing and writing and writing and to not judge. And I've learned now after writing 2 books that that's what happens. If I can get out of the way and just write and not judge what I'm writing and keep going with it until I get a sensation that now it's time to call in help, I do that now. And then I call in an editor. And in this case, the editor had a lot going on in her personal life and ended up not being able to help me. And so I kind of got quiet and checked in. And I had a weird situation with the publisher that wasn't lining up either. And so I just checked in with myself. And what I heard was keep going and trust yourself and trust your own way and trust your own process. And it will still all turn out, but you don't need as much help as you think you do. And so I really followed my own guidance even more with this book. And the final product, like I said, is getting wonderful reviews, and I'm really happy with it. So, yay.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine just going through it another time. Like you learn to trust yourself more. I have a lot of lines like underlined. So I wanted to just kind of skim through and read something just so people listening can get a sense of your voice and in the writing and see what wants to be shared here. So I really loved this chapter. It was called No More Blame. I'll read from this. So Renee wrote, freedom I've discovered is letting go and jumping into the stream of life. Being willing to be uncomfortable and trusting that divine choreography will always lead us to the next right unfolding. It is looking for the good in everything we gaze upon or stumble upon. It is, as A Course in Miracles states, finding the miracles in each moment instead of the grievances. Freedom is letting go of blame and taking full responsibility for all that happens to oneself, even and especially childhood trauma. It's backing up enough to get the perspective to see that our soul chose our family and our childhood, setting in order to experience certain things and learn certain skill sets to make our difference in the world, to live out our destiny. If that is not an empowering perspective, I don't know what is. By living through trauma, we become experts in that trauma. When we overcome the trauma and thrive, we become experts in how to heal, which then allows us to help others heal. I'll just pause there. Anything you want to say about that?
It's so interesting hearing you read that. Profoundly touched me. I mean, I have tears in my eyes. And it makes me realize that I went through so much trauma in childhood and in adulthood and then in that cult, and it's all worth it. I wouldn't undo any of it. I don't see any of it as, oh, poor me, this happened to me. I realize now it really happened for me. And I needed that crucible, those crucibles to become who I am in order to help heal others. And just the feedback I've been getting from my writing is that my books are so healing, and I would go through hell all over again if I knew that I could heal people with it. It's so worth it. So thank you for reading that.
Yeah. Tell us a little more just how you began to make that shift from feeling like a victim, so much happened to me, into seeing it as your power, your empowerment.
There's actually a chapter in the burn zone, I think it's called Warrior, towards the end, where I had just been so broken and I was so devastated and I was no longer trusting the world and I was no longer trusting myself, and my health got bad and my sanity, I was suicidal, and I'd burned almost everything I'd owned, and I'd lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I'd been smeared all over the New York tabloids, and I just was this weepy mess. And my strong body that was so strong from surfing and martial arts and dancing had no muscle and was fat, and I had just been in this heap on the sofa for months as a victim. And then I woke up one morning and I said, I'm done being a victim. I'm ready to be a warrior. And everything I went through was to find God, goddess. That's why I became ordained. That's why I joined this cult. And if I believe in God, goddess, source, I have to believe that this is all part of the divine plan. And it was like, I put on my war paint and I just was like, I'm coming out of this as a warrior, not a victim. And I made a playlist called Back in Black, and it started with AC/DC's Back in Black, and it had Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train because he talks about losing his mind, and Eminem's Lose Yourself, and Dr. Dre's like one of him and Snoop Dogg, and I played it really loud on repeat. And I signed up for body pump classes and pole dancing classes, and I decided to go back to NYU and finish my MBA, and just that every single thing that happened to me happened for me. And I was just going to rise out of this fire and the ashes like a phoenix. And that was the beginning of rocking version 2.0 of Renee Linnell.
Oh my God. You something lit inside of you.
Yeah.
You just found your strength.
And it was so important, and it was so empowering to take responsibility for all of it. It was even childhood trauma. It was so empowering.
Yeah. And then, so later in this chapter, you even shared about how you were telling the story of the burn zone. And then this woman who's like, oh, I'll help you sell your books. And she ended up like keeping your cost of your sales. Do you want to tell that story?
Oh, well, just that when I was on the book tour for the burn zone at one point, and I was a new author and I was kind of shy, and doing the talks was awkward, and took a lot of strength to get up there and tell my story over and over. And I gave my talk to this group of people, probably 100 people. And then they asked me to sell my book after, and I had no way to take credit card payments. So this woman said, well, I'm selling books for this other author, and I can just take credit card payments for you and write you a check at the end of the event. And I said, oh my gosh, that's so nice of you. Thank you so much. And so she took all the credit card sales for me. And then when she went to write me the check, she said, by the way, I do a 60-40 split with all my authors. So you get 60% of the sales, and I get 40. And I thought, well, that's something should have told me ahead of time. And then when she added up my sales, she conveniently got the sales count wrong. And I had no way to prove that she was wrong. And so she undercharged me for the amount of books too, or overcharged me. She counted too few books. And I didn't say anything because I was so shocked. And I went in the car, I brought all my books to the car, and I just started crying. And then I realized, you know what? I had just spent the last half an hour talking about being a victim of the cult, a victim of my childhood, my abusive mother, a victim of the guy in New York that I lost my business to. And she just jumped right on the victim train and made me a victim too. And so from that day on, I changed my whole talk. I said, I want to talk about triumph after tragedy, and how everything that happens to us happens for us. And I'm completely happy to answer questions anyone has about what happened in the cult and in my childhood. But I really want this discussion to be about how life comes along with a sledgehammer to break us open so that we blossom and bloom and grow.
And what did you notice when you started just shifting how you spoke about the book?
Well, I noticed the talks were way more enjoyable for me, because instead of going like, wah, wah, poor me, I'm this victim, I was like, hey, everybody, this is a super crazy story. I know a lot of you have read it, so we can talk about that, or we can talk about healing, or we can talk about whatever you want. So that was way more fun. And I thought I just felt so much stronger and so much more confident, and like I wasn't dragging that baggage from the past into the present. Like all that stuff happened. It's in the past. I wrote a book about it. You can read it if you want. But here in the present, let's talk about what we all have in common, which is we've all been through trauma. And we have two choices when that happens. We either, basically start to die, or we use it and get stronger and we really start to live.
Stephen, yeah, it's such a relatable and just touching insight to receive, and to see someone who went through it. And probably a lot of the people coming to the talks wow, I thought I went through it. This woman really went through it. And it's you found that much, more power from all of it. And it's just such a different, perspective to have than what we've been conditioned. And I know that you consider yourself like a sensitive being. And I wondered if like you could share more for anyone listening that identifies with that, or maybe is living a life where they've made choices or they feel like life has made choices for them and it's not fitting, or their soul is starting to feel like that soul sick type of place. Could you share more about like, yeah, just being a sensitive being right now on planet Earth and how we navigate?
Yes. And hopefully it's helpful. But there are so many of us on this planet, but we were taught very young that we had to blend in order to survive. And we had to hide a lot of our skill set in order to not stand out and to not threaten a lot of the adults around us. So we've forgotten who we are, which is a major problem. And then we feel everything that's going on in this world. And this world is a really kind of crazy realm. It's very heavy. There's also a lot of light, but you have 8 billion people and the majority live in fear, honestly, fear and lack and scarcity. And so those of us that are so sensitive, we're here to raise the vibration, even if we do nothing else but live in joy and stay in our bodies, we are uplifting the vibration of the planet. So we have to realize that we don't have to do anything besides stay alive in our bodies and live in joy to make a profound impact on this planet. And then you adding our divine skill set into the world, and that makes a profound impact. And so I think it's crucial that we don't pay attention to the things that drag us down. Like I cannot watch media. I can't watch television. It's really hard for me to be on social media. So it's protecting our vibration in that way. But I also think it's important that we go out into the world when we're called to go out into the world, and to not be so sensitive that we go, oh, I can't go to this bar because the vibrations are so low, or I can't go to lunch with these people because they're going to suck the life out of me. So it's this fine line between honoring what's in alignment in each moment for where our energy is being called, and also knowing that we're strong enough to handle it. And so I've learned finally to tune into, does whatever this activity I'm being presented with, does it feel aligned for me? And it's fascinating because sometimes, for example, going to a music festival, which I can't stand being around all those people, but that will feel really aligned because I'm supposed to have some divine appointments there, meet some people. Whereas going to coffee with somebody the next day doesn't feel aligned and feels really heavy. So I think as sensitive beings, we have to realize we have to honor our guidance on where our energy is being called, and we cannot override it to people please. And that's a tough ask. It's taken me years to fine tune that. And there was another part of your question that was huge too, and I forget what the second part was.
About soul sickness.
Soul sickness. Okay. So soul sickness comes when we're not living in alignment with our soul's calling. And those of us that are sensitive feel it a lot because we people please. And so we're stuck in this realm as incredibly sensitive beings, people pleasing and overriding our own inner guidance that tells us where to be, when to be, and what to be doing. And so when we feel that soul sickness, it's a huge calling to stop, just stop, and then reevaluate every single choice in every single day. Does it bring me joy? Is it filled with light? Does it uplift me? Do I feel energized after? And if the answer is no, we have to cut it out of our life. We have to, or we won't stay. We won't stay on this planet. We won't stay in our bodies. So it's like when you put the choice up against that, then you realize, okay, maybe hurting someone else's feelings because I'm not going to go to dinner with them every single time this person asks is more important than me being, in hell inside my mind and exhausted and sick after every time I go, something like that.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you've really started to fine tune your intuitive guidance and that like, yes, no. Would you say like, just asking that simple question, does this bring me joy? Like, would you say that's your intuition? Did that help you find that voice?
Oh, definitely. And I know you talk about this tuning into your body and asking what yes feels like and what no feels like,
Mhm.
or closing our eyes and feeling which choice has light and which choice doesn't. And
Mm.
I do it for almost everything. Whether when I'm picking a flight, should I go on Tuesday or Wednesday? I close my eyes, which has light, which doesn't. And I'm in Argentina right now, and I was sure that the flight Tuesday night had the most light. It absolutely had the most light. I checked in a ton of times. And when I went to the airport and got on that plane, we sat on that plane for 3 hours before they made us get off and go home. And I thought, why? And it was chaos, and there was an extra passenger on the plane, and they didn't know how the passenger got there, and security came. And then, I mean, it was just, I could not figure out why I kept being guided to go on that particular plane. And then the next day, when we all showed up at the airport, I showed up at the exact same time as another couple that was on the plane. We spent the 2 hours waiting for the plane together. They're this incredible couple that owns a vineyard here in one of the fanciest resorts in the world. And they took me under their wing, and we had this incredible connection. And then the other people on the plane I got to know, and I realized the universe had me on that plane to meet these people. And I never would have met them if we hadn't been delayed. I never would have talked to them. I never would have seen them. So, yes.
That's divine appointments. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, and trusting the universe is always looking out for us. So in those moments where and then I got to the airport in Argentina at 1 a.m. and someone had taken my bag. So my suitcase never came. I never found my suitcase.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up in a taxi at 3:30 a.m. at this woman's house, but I was supposed to meet that woman. And the whole time I could have been so angry about that experience, but I just kept saying the universe is always looking out for me. There's some adventure in this for me. And I had to meet the woman who took my bag.
Yeah, it's that lens that you're seeing the world through. It's like life is happening for me, not to me.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And I got a tour of the city at 3:30 in the morning on empty streets with the most amazing taxi driver. I mean, it just was magic and miracles all over the place. But I could have not seen them if I had been stuck in the whole, why does this happen to me? I got on the wrong plane, we got delayed, and now I'm stuck at the airport and someone took my bag.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like we have to be kind of like Jedis with our mind, right?
We
And
do.
just like start to watch where it could be going and then be like, okay, back up. What else? What good could be coming from this? What good is happening right now?
Yes, and it's not easy, but I mean, that's the way we live a life of joy.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you more about what you mentioned, people pleasing. And yeah, just that it sounds like that was even, it took a while or even more recent lesson of like not giving your power away. Or I think you wrote, caring what other people think of us equals giving away our power. So I'd love to hear about just anything you learned around taking your power back, not how do we not care so much what other people think of us?
Oh, it's so hard. First, we have to realize that we do it and admit that we do it to ourselves. And then we have to understand that we learn to do it as children because approval from the adults around us meant our survival. If they didn't approve of us, if we got kicked out of the house, we would die. So we learn to people please. The unfortunate thing is that as adults, I was wondering, what does give our power away? Everybody says it. What does it really mean? And I explain it in the chapter you just read. It's when we hand other people the ability to decide for us how we are. So we decide, okay, if other people think I'm attractive, then I'm attractive. If other people like my outfit, then my outfit's great. If other people like what I posted on social media, then what I posted is good. It's likable. And I noticed we overstretch in yoga to appear more flexible, and we lift heavy weight that's too heavy for us in the gym to appear stronger, all to strangers, to people we will never see again. Because the people who love us love us. They love us regardless of what we look like or what we're doing. So then we're trying to impress strangers. And we do it with everything to the point of building lives that we hate, to appear successful to the world, or, what women do to their faces and bodies to appear beautiful to the world. And we have to stop. We're bombarded when I did that tour for the burn zone and everyone said, how could you be brainwashed? And in the beginning, I was like, oh, poor me. I'm a sappy victim. I was brainwashed. I don't know how it happens. I was lost. And now I realize, we're all brainwashed. We're constantly bombarded by messaging that tells us we're not okay, so that we'll buy products. And we have got to have the strength of mind to ignore it, to tune it out, to look in the mirror and say, you're beautiful, regardless of what, the media would say about our age or our weight or our size or our shape or the color of our skin or whatever it is. To realize that success in this realm is joy and peace and the ability to be kind and the ability to be present. It's not finances. So reframing all those paradigms, I think, is really important. But just to make, what we think of ourselves the most important thing, not what others do. I mean, haven't you noticed when you decide you're beautiful, and then you have a day where you decide you're ugly, and you look at pictures or whatever, and you're like, I don't look that great. And then just on a random day, you go, I'm beautiful. And if you see a picture of yourself that day, you look beautiful. It's all up to us.
Yeah. We're creating the reality that we live in.
We are.
What do you do? Do you have any tricks around like mind tips? Like if we do start to go down a negative spiral, like what do you usually do? Does it even happen for you anymore?
Oh my gosh, no, it happens all the time. You listen to me talk and you think it doesn't, but no, it happens all the time. I think that's why I can talk about it so clearly. And so what I've learned to do is say I'm feeling afraid or self-doubt but let's just say, okay, let's pick self-doubt about something. And I'll notice it's in the back of my head all day long. I'm being insecure. Like right now I'm in Argentina and I'll have days where it's like, oh, I'm insecure that I'm not speaking the language properly, or I'm insecure when I'm in a store that I'm doing everything the right way because they do it differently here. And then I'll go to cross the street and I'll notice, oh, I just was insecure crossing the street because I didn't want to step in front of a car when there's no traffic light and I don't understand who's stopping and who's not. And then I'll stop and I'll go, okay, stop. You are 3 hours into this day and you're totally insecure. What's going on? And I'll try to find the part of me that's feeling insecure. And it's usually a child part, just a little girl part that's not getting what she needs. And I'll ask her, what is it you need? And an answer for the insecure thing will be like, I don't care what these people think of me. I don't want to be in a rush. I want to walk slowly. I want to look in the windows. I want to sit at a cafe and luxuriate over coffee. And I want to try my best with Spanish. And if I make mistakes, I don't want to be judged. And that part of me will talk to me and say that she's not getting her needs met. Or with fear, I'll go, well, why am I feeling so afraid? What is that? And in that situation, I'll realize that's not me. I've tapped into mass consciousness and I'm feeling their fear. And then I'll go, well, why am I tapping so strongly into mass consciousness? And I'll go, oh my gosh, because I spent an hour doing social media this morning. I'm saturated with mass consciousness. So is that helpful?
Yeah. And then if you notice that, then just the awareness of like, okay, I'm coming back to myself. Do you usually meditate or anything to like center after tapping back into mass consciousness?
Usually when I'm feeling out of sorts and I figure out why or catch myself, I have to do really deep breathing, like maybe 5 really deep inhales and exhales to ground myself into the present moment. And then once I do that and I'm calmer, then I can go again, like, well, why am I so irritable? Or why am I so anxious? Or what's going on? With the irritability, sometimes I have dinner plans that night that I really don't want to do. And that vibration of irritability will be infiltrating every second of the day. And so finally I'll stop and it's like, oh my gosh, it's tonight. It's trying to get everything done before I have to get ready to go tonight. And then I'll be like, well, honey, don't go. And as soon as I go, honey, don't go, it's like, oh, I feel so much better. So,
yeah. Yeah. Every moment is an opportunity to be in alignment or out of alignment and to sit with that.
And I think that our normal vibration is in alignment. It's in alignment, right? So when we're feeling like irritable, scared, sad, self-doubt, whatever it is, we're out of alignment. And so then the question is, okay, what can I do to get back in as fast as possible?
Yes. Beautiful. I wanted to ask you about just shining your light. And I know that as an author, you've had to come more into being comfortable being the center of attention and being comfortable sharing, just these stories and also your perspective and the beauty of how you see life and the good things that come from also seeing life that way. And sometimes there are people who don't resonate with that. And how has your journey been of, just friends changing and giving yourself permission to shine?
It hasn't been easy. And when Still on Fire came out, I was having these waves of absolutely intense fear. And when I tuned into them, I realized they were the fear was so intense that it was fear of being killed and fear of being tortured. And I realized that was past life stuff coming up from speaking kind of against mass consciousness paradigms, speaking out against them, or not even against them, offering a different view, let's just say, than the norm. And I had to have that same talk with myself, honey, you're safe. In this life, the Inquisition's not going to come after you and burn you at the stake. You're not going to be drawn and quartered or all of that stuff. Worst case scenario is people are going to attack you for what you're saying. And I'm surprised, but I've only had good reviews so far, which means people are really ready for this information. And I have lost some friendships as I've held beliefs that differ from the mainstream narrative, let's just say. And that's been painful for me because I love all those people. But as I've been learning, in order to live a life of joy, I have to love and honor myself more. And I can't be the little girl who doesn't speak my truth because it's going to offend the other people in the room. And so I just kept kind of giving myself that pep talk. Speak your truth, speak louder, speak clearer, speak your truth, speak louder, speak clearer with love. And it's gotten easier and easier.
I want this for everyone, to find that strength. And I know, a lot of women I've worked with have that similar fear of like past life stuff coming to the surface around speaking their truth or even making a post on social media. And it's scary. It can be really hard. And I think, it's an opportunity for healing and growth because in this day and age, luckily, they aren't taking down the witches, at least in a physical sense, as much. So it's more of a, I guess, cancel culture and all of that exists. But we have, the opportunity to heal some of those more deeply rooted fears and to see that we're safe now and that actually this is a time to reclaim our voice and to come back into our power and to shift things, from what has been for so long, a more patriarchal dominated society to like giving space for women to shine, all of that.
Yes. And I think the only way we all find each other is by spreading our wings and shining with our light, because otherwise it's kind of like, I think of dragons, and I have always felt like a dragon that was in a cage, and a cage that was too small, and I couldn't spread my wings, and I couldn't breathe with fire, and I just scared everybody, and then finally, when I was suicidal, I was like, well, I can't live like this anymore. I'm not going to stay. So it's like I finally started to roar with fire and expand my wings and shatter the cage and break, everything that was around me because I was in so many worlds that were too small for me. But then it's like, well, how do the other dragons ever find us if we're like holding in our wings and our fire? They can't. And then we feel all alone on this planet. We feel like there's no one like us. So it's only when we expand those wings and roar with fire and shine with light and speak our truth that other similar beings find us. And then we go, oh my gosh, there's so many of us. I'm so completely not alone. And then for the other dragons that are trying to have the courage to spread their wings and roar with fire, they see us doing it and they go, oh, I can do it too. It's safe. Not only is it safe, but it's fun. So we have to now more than ever.
Yeah. Yeah. To join together. I think I saw someone with a bunch of bumper stickers on their car, and one of them was like, don't hide your weirdness. How are all the other weirdos gonna find you?
It's so
Something like
true.
that.
It's so true.
Yeah, so important. So you have a lot of like beautiful travel stories and romance stories in the book. Maybe we could just like touch on one or two of those. One of the travel ones that was like really touching. And actually, when I read it and I shared it with my partner and he started to like tear up, was the Hawaii, the waves in Hawaii. Would
Oh,
you share that story with us?
when I was drowning.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I'd met this really hot guy who was a famous big wave rider, and he talked me into paddling out tandem on his 13-foot Rhino Chaser, which is a board for surfing huge waves in Waimea Bay, which is one of the biggest wave spots in the world, or a famous spot for really big waves. And that day, the surf was huge. So huge that the lifeguards were going back and forth on jet skis looking for people who needed rescue, and the helicopters were circling overhead with photographers. And so I paddled out with him, and we were just going to sit in the channel and watch. And we did, and it was amazing, but I was scared the whole time. And I knew that I wasn't going to be okay if something went wrong. And so I said, can we please go back to the beach? And he said, yes. And we went back in, and it was really tricky because the shore pound was easily double overhead, and the kind of shore pound that breaks backs and breaks surfboards and paralyzes people. And he got me safely onto the sand, but he had to navigate the surfboard. So once he dropped me off, he had to back up away from the shore pound and wait and then come in between the next sets. And as I was trying to get from the wet sand to the dry sand, a wave sucked me out and sucked me back into the water. And then the current immediately took me away from this guy and down towards what they called the death zone, which is these lava cliffs and rocks, razor sharp. And I couldn't swim into the shore pound to get on the beach because it was going to either kill me or paralyze me. And yet I was being sucked down towards the death zone, and I didn't have a surfboard, and I kept kind of going under. And then I knew I was going to need to be rescued. And the guy was still trying to get the surfboard in. I mean, I wasn't even looking at him, but he didn't notice what happened to me. And so as I started going under and my world went black, a Hawaiian man showed up, and he was so beautiful in the light that he radiated and the calm and the peace. And he said, I'm going to hold you above the water, hold your waist so your head's above water until the lifeguard comes. And he put his hands on my hips and he held me so that my head was above water. And then right then the lifeguard came, and he was screaming, hold on to me and take a deep breath. And we have to take the shore pound in, and do not let go of me, and do not open your mouth underwater. And so I said, okay. And we went in through the shore pound, and he had fins so he could get us through it faster. And we got kind of slammed up onto the beach, and then he was screaming, run, 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 so that the water wouldn't suck us back in. And we both collapsed in the sand, and I started sobbing. And then meanwhile, the guy with the surfboard had been running down the beach and he alerted the lifeguard. So he landed next to us and was sobbing. And then I looked out, and the man wasn't there. I was worried about that man. And I said, well, where's the man who was saving me? Where's that man? And they both said, Renee, you were all alone.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing, isn't it? I
So
mean,
powerful. And it was just so real for you.
it was so real. I mean, it makes me cry because I was sinking. I was drowning. I was going under. My world was going black, and he appeared and he held me. And they didn't see him, but he sure was there. And it just shows me we don't exit this realm until it's our time to exit. We do not. Death doesn't just come for us randomly. It comes when we've completed our mission here, or when we're exhausted and we want to go home for a break. But it's not random, and it was not my time that day.
Oh, in a way, that experience and other experiences you've had make you feel like you could live more fearlessly, like less afraid of death?
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely. Like when 9/11 happened, I was traveling the world on empty 747s because I knew, when it's my time, it's my time. It's not like random that I would be on a plane that goes down unless that was my calling. And with the whole COVID thing, I never once thought about getting sick. I mean, if it's my time and that's my way to go. So I traveled the world during all the lockdowns. I traveled all over, empty planes, empty hotels, having the time of my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something else in your book about like those opt-out moments. Like we
Yeah.
had, can you share about that?
Oh, sure. So when I was so broken from everything that happened with the cult and the New York thing and all that, I was snowboarding and I hit a rock that was buried under 18 inches of snow. And I flew up into the air and landed on my head, but ducked my neck and rolled out of it. And the next day, I happened to have a call with a woman who reads the Akashic Records. And in between that time, that afternoon, I decided I didn't want to live in New York. I didn't want to be with the guy I was dating. I didn't want to do anything but move to Colorado and write. And when I talked to the woman who reads the Akashic Records, I was allowed to ask her 5 questions. And the first question I asked was, what happened to me yesterday? I didn't say anything else. And she said, Renee, ski accidents are so interesting. People die all the time and nobody asks questions. But your soul had scheduled an opt out and you decided to stay. And when you decided to stay, you decided to get on your true path. And I realized the last thing I had done before I got on the plane to go on that trip was have my will changed and notarized. So some part of me knew that I had scheduled this opt out. And she explained that opt outs, souls schedule them. We all schedule them in our lives for if we decide we don't want to be here anymore. And those are the accidents that happen instantly, or, the heart attacks, the car accidents, or instant death that comes. It's a transition out back to home with a capital H. And our main exit can happen that way too. It doesn't have to be getting sick and getting old and slowly deteriorating. I mean, we can always choose, as Abraham Hicks says, happy, healthy, happy, healthy, happy, healthy, dead. But the idea of the opt-out was so fascinating to me and it made so much sense. And I remembered if I did not tuck my neck, I would have broken it. But instead I rolled out of that accident.
Wow. And you were not, like, your body was fine after that?
Everything was fine. Everything was fine. The only thing that shifted was my perspective on basically snapping myself out of living a life that wasn't true to me into making the changes to live one that was.
Wow. I have another quote I want to read.
Okay.
I think this will kind of speaks to that. Okay. I'll read these two because near the end, I think it's in the epilogue. Yeah. We're here on earth in these bodies for such a short time. We are supposed to live in joy. We are supposed to discover and nurture and develop our divine gifts and share them with the world. We are not supposed to live in fear and lack and hatred and scarcity. These are all faulty belief systems that have been handed down to us and ingrained in us so deeply that too many of us created lives based on them. Our thoughts create our reality. If we believe life is hard and we live in a hostile universe, we create lives that reflect this. We do not have to get married. We do not have to have kids. We do not have to buy huge houses with mortgages we cannot afford. We do not have to slave away at jobs we hate in order to pay for these things. These are all choices. We owe it to ourselves to truly examine all the paradigms we have been handed by the collective and ask ourselves, does this make sense for me? And if the answer is no, then it is time to disrupt these paradigms. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. And the truth is, we look up to the disruptors. When we look at the people who've truly made it in life, you look at Elvis Presley, for example, that movie just came out. He disrupted that whole paradigm of basically white and black. He was a white man singing music that he wasn't supposed to be singing and dancing ways he wasn't supposed to dance. And the whole world fell in love with him and then demonized him and then fell back in love with him. Or you look at, anyone who's had a spectacular life is a disruptor, and who was willing to be ostracized and demonized and all of that, but continue on their journey to offer their divine gifts to the world. And then the whole world ends up worshiping them, finally.
I know. With so many people, it's like, they go through a lot of hardship of people, ostracizing, and then comes back around and everyone worships.
Yeah.
So we're meant to be alive and to be ourselves. And the more that people do that, the easier it's going to be for someone else to see someone doing that and be like, oh, okay, I don't want to live that life of fear and inauthenticity. Do you have any closing words for people? Any other, anything you would love to leave people with? People that are maybe suffering or in depression or feeling like life isn't worth living in the course it's going on. What is your insight for them?
My insight for them is that first we have to start with realizing that we live in the world of dichotomy. So we are not supposed to be happy all the time. In fact, we're supposed to experience the opposites. We can't know pain without knowing pleasure. We can't know happiness without knowing sadness. And so we will be living in darker states of mind, like 50% of the time. It's the world of opposites. And the brighter we are and the more sensitive we are and the higher we fly in bliss, we will experience the opposite, which means the darker we get, the lower we go. When we're in one of those states of minds, we go down the rabbit hole to a really dark place. It's not bipolar disorder. It's being a highly sensitive being experiencing the opposites. And so once we start with the premise that being depressed is a perfectly normal stage of being human, then we take the stigma away from it. Then we can breathe and be like, oh my gosh, I'm having a total week of being just absolutely depressed, and nothing I do can lift me out of it. Or if it's a more acute, more intense depression, we can go like, what is in my life that's causing me so much pain? And then be willing to go, the choices are leave, transition out, transition back to non-physical, or stay. And if I'm going to stay, why not start filling my days with everything I love? All the little things, that luxuriating over a cup of coffee, walking in nature, noticing as you walk. Today I was noticing all the hearts scribbled on the sidewalk. There's so many hearts everywhere. And I was like, love is everywhere, but someone else walking could have been like, it's just traffic and noise and dog poop. And so it's really being so gentle with ourselves and finally giving to the child inside us everything we want the world to give us, the validation, the caring, the kindness, the words of you're so beautiful, I'm so proud of you. So softening around that depression and going, if I am going to stay, what brings me joy, and doing more and more and more of that, those tiny things, and allowing it to take as long as it takes. If you've been living a life you hate and betraying yourself for 40 years, you're not going to turn it around in a year. I mean, it's taken me like 8 probably. So those are my words. And then I just want to say, in a world of 8 billion people, we're the only version of us there is, which is truly spectacular. So we're not supposed to be like other people. We're supposed to be like this quirky, weird, flawed, wild, amazing version that's unique. And so then when we stop trying to be like everyone else and we just get to be ourselves, it's so easy because we know how to be ourselves, and then it's more fun. And then as we're having fun, we're kinder. And then as we're kinder, the world's kinder back to us, and it's an upward spiral. So I'd say celebrate your weirdness, and it's okay to be depressed. Those are my big takeaways.
Oh, so beautiful. Let's just take that into our hearts. Yeah, just feeling all the gratitude for getting to, yeah, just for our souls meeting in this life, Renee. We've, yeah, had the opportunity to walk by each other for a few years now. So, such a blessing to know you and to share with you and to receive your wisdom and for you to receive my wisdom and to, yeah, just celebrate life, this life. So, thank you so much for being here. And yeah, to everyone listening, I hope this just brightens your day and gives you some wisdom to carry forth in this wild human experience. So many blessings and gratitude. Thank you. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. If you liked it, share it with a friend or leave us a review on iTunes. You can also follow along on Instagram at Meredith Rom and sign up for email updates at risingwomanleaders.com to be sure to receive all the new and inspiring content. Thanks again for being here. It's an honor to walk this path with you.